Hello everybody and welcome to another detailed gun review. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Uberti American Buntline in 44 Magnum. The particular gun that I have in front of me is an older gun. I haven't actually looked up quite how old it is, but I believe it's probably made in the 80s or 90s. The gun is still in production and Henry Cranks in the UK are still importing them. However, they only are able to import the ones with the target sights. So instead of this traditional look with the fixed notch in the back and the fixed front, they only sell the target sight model. I believe that's all Uberti are currently producing. I assume they sell better, which I think is a real shame because this really has that classic single action army look, and in my opinion the target sight model just kind of ruins the lines of the gun a little bit. However, if you would like one of these and you don't mind the target sights, like I said, Henry Cranks do currently import these. I think they're around £600. They do them in a 357 Magnum, 44 Winchester centerfire, and 45 Colt. Like I said before, this particular gun is a 44 Magnum. I just had a few 44 specials out here for decoration. Get those away. And I bought this one used, of course. I did not buy this new in the 80s. I'm not quite that old. And it's one with the fixed sights, which I think is the one that you want. I very rarely see these for sale in the UK with the original fixed sights. There are plenty available with the target sights, and there are also plenty available with the fixed shoulder stock instead of a pistol grip, which they sell as the Revolver carbine or carbine revolver. So if you want this on your FAC as a rifle, they do sell it as a rifle. And the rifles, just the same as this Buntline pistol version, do come with 18-inch barrels. So for anyone out there who isn't familiar with gun regulations in England, let's go over it quickly again. I know I talk about this a lot, but if anyone from any other country is watching this, they might not quite understand how things work over here. And essentially, any cartridge firing firearms on your firearm certificate must have a barrel length of at least 300mm and an overall length of 600mm, which translates roughly to 12 inches and 24 inches. So in terms of barrel length, you need a minimum 12-inch, which of course this exceeds by far. This has a just slightly shy of 18-inch barrel, and the overall length is right on the 24 inches minimum. So in effect, this is the shortest cartridge firing type of gun we are allowed. So there are a few ways of going about this. This Buntline is one way of going about it. You've got the very, very long barrel, your regular sized receiver, your frame and grip to make a very long, ungainly looking thing. Your other alternative would be to have the 12-inch barrel, such as on this Taurus Model 66 long barrel revolver. So you've got the 12-inch barrel, and then you've got a rod on the back, a fixed rod to make it up to the overall length. So these guns are basically the same length. However, they handle very differently, of course. This one having the rod and a shorter barrel, this one having the very long barrel and no rod. Another example is the UK model Chiappa Rhino I have here. This one is in 9mm. And again, you can see we have the long barrel and the rods to make it the same length. So traditionally, this is the kind of thing most people are going to go for. It handles slightly better, it puts less of the weight up front, and it feels a little bit more natural to most people. However, upon buying this, I was pleasantly surprised, and I found that even one-handed, it's nowhere near as bad as you would think. I find it quite easy to shoot one-handed, definitely with two hands, very easy. And yes, it is awkward, and no, you're not going to find a holster to put it in. But overall, I don't think it's too bad. And it really does give you a pistol shooting experience without the rod hanging out the back, which can get annoying on some guns. On some guns like the Rhino, they've sorted it out very well, and it hangs well away from your arm, doesn't touch it. You're never going to really feel it. However, on my Taurus, the way it pokes out the bottom of the grip there, I do always feel it touching my arm. I could probably bend it down a bit more if I wanted, but so on some guns it is definitely more intrusive than on others. Something that does help slightly with the weight is that this gun does have a rather large hole in the front, being the 44 Magnum version. I imagine that the 357 version would be quite a bit heavier, just where the barrel is going to be that much thicker. Okay, so let's have a closer look at this gun. Like I mentioned before, you have a fixed front sight in the traditional single action style. And what you would have done in the old days, if your gun wasn't shooting point of impact with your particular load, you would file your front sight down so it matched your point of impact, which I'm not going to be doing with this, but you certainly could if you wanted to. As you'd expect on a single action army, you've got your ejector rod here, your ejector rod housing for ejecting your empties, which I'll go through later in case you're not aware. There are markings, model American Buntline 44 Magnum. A little bit hard to focus since the whole thing's so shiny. The bluing on this is absolutely lovely. This is an older gun, it has some marks. We've got a little bit of pitting or a little bit of damage to the finish there. There's a few marks on it, but this is an older gun. I got it for a decent price, so that's okay. And to be honest, on an antique style gun like this, I don't mind if it's got a little bit of wear and tear. I think it adds character, and still the majority of it is in very good condition. Very nice bluing on the barrel, which is kind of hilariously longer than the barrel on most of my rifles. Let's have a little comparison here. Here's my Chiappa 1892 Trapper in 357. That's got a 16-inch barrel, and the pistol's got an 18-inch barrel. I don't know why I keep referring to it as a pistol, because there is a difference between pistol and revolver. Sorry about that. But yeah, compared to the revolver, it's actually got a shorter barrel. And perhaps a slightly closer comparison, this is my Ruger 77 44 Magnum bolt action, which is a nice gun. I'll probably review this at some point. It's got a little peep sight on the back there. And this gun also has an 18-inch barrel. I think it's actually an 18.5, but you can see there they match up fairly closely. It's a bizarre thing to have a handgun that has that equals the barrel length on your rifle like that. And like I said before, if you're looking for a holster, even if you manage to find a holster that it fit in, I mean, good luck getting it out in a hurry. Okay, so continuing down the gun and covering the barrel in fingerprints, we have a lovely color case hardened effect receiver. Now, a lot of people, including myself, will simply describe this as color case hardened. The truth is that the Italian manufacturers who produce guns with this finish on, like my Chiappa, which is absolutely gorgeous, this isn't real color case hardening. They're not putting it into a very high heat with bits of charcoal and bone and stuff and rags. They simply don't. This is a chemical finish that simply imitates the look. However, I don't care. I think it looks great. Very hard to get this on camera. Compared to my Chiappa there, it's slightly less of a dark blue finish and it's more of a kind of a brown. There are some very nice bits of blue in there as well. But I love how every single one of these that you come across has different patterns on it. And yeah, the finish on this is just really nice. Very similar to on their 1873 Winchester replicas. Very nice. And like I said before, there is wear in some areas, like on the hammer, as you can see there. But I think it all adds to the effect personally. And it's just a great looking gun. The cylinder is blued. The grip frame is blued. The trigger is blued. And the back strap is also blued. Now the grips are a one-piece affair, so they aren't both screwed on, you know, two pieces screwed on. This is a single bit of wood that does have quite a shiny lacquer on it, which the Italian gun companies like. Personally, I quite like this. A lot of people will like to strip it off and then put a nice oil finish on them. Don't get me wrong, a nice oil finish on wood is lovely. However, on these guns with the color case hardening and the nice bright blue, I actually think it looks really nice to have a sort of a varnished lacquered piece of wood like that. And it is a pretty nice piece of wood. It's in very good shape considering the gun's age. A few little dinks on it, but yeah, looks pretty good, I think, and it fits very nicely. As you can hopefully see, the metal to wood finish is very good. It's all very tight, all very well put together. The only little bit of movement or noise you get when you shake this is the cylinder, which has got a little bit of play until you cock it, at which point it locks up very nicely. So overall, just a really nicely built gun. Very solid. So for maintenance and cleaning, this cylinder is very easy to remove. All you've got to do is open the loading gate, put the gun on half cock, which is 2 clicks back, push the button on the frame here, pull out the axis pin, which you can either pull out all the way or just leave the end in there, and it simply falls out, which is very nice and easy. And here you can see we've got a nice blued cylinder. It's clearly been shot quite a lot. We've got lots of score marks from where the cylinder's been turning, but it's in fairly good shape. Mechanically, this gun indexes very well. Anyway, I think it would be very unlikely anybody would be watching this video who didn't know the difference between single and double action, but on the odd chance that someone is watching this and they're not entirely sure what single action means, I'll give a quick demonstration with my Taurus here. So this is a single and double action revolver. Double action means that the trigger has 2 functions, and the first part of the pull will pull the hammer back, and as you go through, it'll release it. So the trigger is doing 2 things: releasing, pulling it back and releasing it. Single action means that the hammer must first be cocked, and then the trigger is only performing 1 function, which is to release it. So this is a double action and single action revolver. This is a single action revolver. 4 clicks and it's cocked, and the trigger simply fires it. Let's just check there's nothing in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, as it should do. Very nice crisp trigger. That's the great thing about single action. It's pretty difficult for them to have a bad trigger. Bit of over travel, but the actual break is remarkably crisp, and this really is just a joy to shoot. Of course, being a gate-loaded gun, reloading it and unloading it is fairly slow. Simply putting it to half cock, opening the gate, and then dropping loose cartridges in. And as I'm sure most of you know, the typical thing to do back in the old West would be to load 1, skip 1, and then load 4 more. So that when you close the gun and lower the hammer, you are lowering it on an empty chamber, and there's no chance of the gun going off if you were to drop it. And unloading is fairly tedious. As you would imagine, you have to get it lined up. I found that this gun isn't particularly good about lining it up automatically. I think that in that regard it is almost slightly out of time, although it's not out of time with the barrel, it's only when you're trying to unload it. The rounds don't quite line up right, so you kind of need to help them a little bit by moving the hammer a bit like that. So yeah, quite a tedious process. Past that one. So what this effectively means to your average shooter or your person who likes to do maybe some kind of competition pistol shooting is that you don't want one of these. They're simply too slow. It's really a gun for recreation, for fun. I suppose there are single action sort of cowboy events in the UK. I'm not sure if anyone really uses these. I think that it's all going to be black powder revolvers in those kind of things. But you could potentially use one of these for that kind of purpose. But like I say, for the average person, it is so much easier to get a double single action Taurus. You can shoot it faster, they're more customizable, you can do more with them. And of course, they're so much easier to load and unload. So I've got a load of speed loaders for this one. And there you go. And perhaps even more convenient, on my Rhino here, which is a 9mm, you're looking at a full moon clip, so even easier. Literally just drop all of them in, all out at once as well. Very quick. But you're not buying a gun like this for speed, you're buying it because of how it looks and how it feels. And to be honest, compared to these, I actually shoot my my single action here the most. I find it so enjoyable to shoot. So in terms of ammunition, I've shot a variety of different loads through this, the indoor and the outdoor range. I've fired a few rounds of properly powered 44 Magnum. It's certainly not hot by any means. Out of a 4-inch revolver, I think these are quoted at 1,200 and something feet per second, so it's certainly not hot ammunition, but it is in the realm of full power 44 Magnum. This is a Magtech jacketed, 240 grain jacketed flat point. Kind of unpleasant, to be honest. With a barrel length this long and not a whole lot to hold on to, it's fairly violent. And to be perfectly honest, I did a little bit of research into the history of Colt single actions, and they were never made in 44 Magnum for good reason. They're not really built for it. Now, unless I'm mistaken, this does follow the form factor and the size of an original single action fairly closely. I don't believe this is heavily beefed up like the Ruger models. So personally, I would not recommend firing a lot of full power 44 Magnum ammo in this. I certainly am not going to be doing that. I fired a few, I didn't find it particularly enjoyable, and there's not really too much point, to be honest. Because where I think this gun really excels is with a slower lead bullet, kind of your more target kind of load. So these are Magtech 44 specials. As you can see, it's the same relationship between a 38 special and a 357 Magnum. It's simply shorter, but it's got the same bullet diameter. These are 240 grain as well, but they're lead bullets. And these are very mild. I think they're quoted at a 700 and something feet per second out of a 4-inch revolver. They're obviously going to be pushing out a little bit faster out of this, but still very mild, very accurate, much more pleasant to shoot. This is much more the kind of ammo that I think is suited to this gun. I personally reload to keep costs down and to get the best accuracy I can. And what I reload is essentially a 44 special load, but in a 44 Magnum case. So they're a little bit longer. I know they're pretty filthy. I didn't tumble these ones. So yeah, 240 grain flat nose lead at just under 1,000 feet per second. Nice and comfortable, very accurate. Something very interesting that I found the first time I shot this gun side by side with my other 44 Magnum, my Ruger. Quite embarrassingly, considering the Rugers go for at least twice as much money as the revolvers. Not that they're comparable in terms of guns, really, but they do cost a lot more. The revolver was more accurate than the rifle, and I really do put that down to just that must be the type of rifling. Jacketed ammunition works absolutely fine in the Ruger, but when I go to the lead bullets, the revolver shoots so much better. And I'm just talking about 25 and 50 yards, not even long range. I was getting 1 inch at 25 yards with the revolver, and I could not do that with the rifle. So I thought that was interesting. I've definitely got good accuracy out of this Ruger. When I stick a scope on it and use factory jacketed ammunition, it's acceptable. It's not an exceptionally accurate rifle. But for the kind of ranges that you're probably going to be shooting a gun like this, I've found it to be exceptionally accurate, and I really do enjoy shooting it. Compared to my Taurus, I find it has a lot less cylinder blast coming out of it. I'm not sure why that is. Perhaps the timing on this is slightly better, or the forcing cone is cut better. For whatever reason, this gun simply produces a lot less concussion, a lot less sort of blast out the sides. And yeah, this is my favourite long barrel revolver, despite it costing a whole lot less than my Rhino, for instance. Yeah, this is much more my kind of thing. Now, it's a little bit difficult to come up with any kind of conclusion when this is an old gun, this is a used gun. It's obviously had quite a few owners, and it's not the kind of thing you could just go out and buy new, so it's very hard to say value-wise whether I would recommend it, whether I would recommend buying it or not. However, I would say in general, I don't think these guns have a great reputation. I feel like a lot of people look at how long the barrel is. They do look pretty funny. A lot of people make Batman Joker jokes, expecting a flag to come out at the end that says bang on it. and assume that they're going to be very hard to shoot, very unbalanced. And hopefully, as you see from the video footage that I've put in here of me shooting it sort of offhand, it's so much better than you'd think. I really don't have any trouble shooting this just offhand, two-handed grip like that, even single-handed. It's not bad at all, actually. I should get the scales out and quickly weigh it for you. Okay, so the Uberti Buntline weighs 1,554 kilograms, so 1.5 kilos. And just for the sake of comparison, the Taurus weighs very, very slightly more, but basically the same. While the Chiappa Rhino, being mostly made out of aluminium, is significantly lighter at 1,145 grams. Right, just before I wrap up, let's give you a quick look at the sight picture, because I'd neglected to do that so far. Very, very simple. Let's cock the hammer. You've simply got the notch on the back, down the frame, and then a very simple little post at the front. Still, despite how basic these are and their lack of adjustability, I found that with a 240 grain lead bullet, this is absolutely dead on at 25 yards. I've not needed to, not that I've been able to, but I've not felt the need to do any kind of modifications here. For me, it hits dead on. Also, something I just remembered, the question occasionally comes up of quite how authentic these are compared to original Colts. And I believe that the newer ones do have a change in lockwork for safety reasons. And it means that they don't actually click the correct amount of times anymore, whereas this one, 1, 2, 3, 4. Despite that, this one does actually have a safety feature in it, which I assume Uberti have been putting in their single actions for a very long time. You can actually see part of the mechanism if we have a look at the back of the hammer here. And as you can see, as I move the hammer, you've got this thing on the back. And this is a very clever little system that actually prevents the firing pin from protruding. And the firing pin is indeed mounted to the hammer as it should be. But it stops the firing pin protruding unless the trigger is all the way back at the point of the hammer striking. Right, I've put a tissue there so you can see the firing pin. So if we fire as if we normally would, you can see the firing pin poking through there. However, if I let it down slowly, and just before it strikes, I let go of the trigger, that firing pin cannot protrude through. And it's to do with this little block on the hammer here. It's a very clever little system. There's a piece that goes through the hammer and kind of is snug up against the trigger. And depending on which position the trigger is in, we'll either let it go all the way forward like that, or it'll stop it. So I don't believe there are any original Colts with this. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. But it seems like quite a good little safety feature, to be honest. It means if you were slowly lowering the hammer and you slipped, as long as you're not holding the trigger anymore, you'd be all right. Yeah, seems like a pretty good idea. And like I said, you've still got the correct number of clicks. It doesn't affect the way the trigger or the hammer feels. And it isn't too intrusive in terms of looks. I think this looks as it should. So yeah, seems pretty good. So in conclusion, like I was saying before, it's hard to give a recommendation of this kind of thing because this is used. I don't know how many of these are actually floating about in the UK with the original sights and in 44 Magnum. But if you are in the market for a single action, go for it. This is really your only option for a single action long barrel revolver. I think that they handle far better than people give them credit for. If you really, really wanted to, you could always chop the barrel to 12 inches and put an extension rod on, but you'd kind of ruin the look. I just think this is really cool. And certainly, if like me, you have a few conventional long barrel revolvers and you want something a little bit different to add to the collection, I think it's absolutely great. Yeah, what more can I say? I think it's awesome. Now, I know this has been a little bit of a rambly one. It is an incredibly hot day today, which is weird, of course, for England. And I think I'm going to faint any minute now, so I better stop there. More reviews are, of course, going to be on the way, so keep a lookout. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.